Hi folks, Dave with DBS Tech Talk, and today we're going to talk about the iFi Audio Pro iCan. As you can see here on the box specs, it has very good looking specs. It has 14 watts of power, it has all kinds of gain settings, bass boost, 3D sound, has XLR ins and outs, IE match, 3.5 balanced out, 3.5 single-ended out. I mean, it just has everything under the sun that you would want as far as an amplifier. And it has a normal solid state side, and then a tube section, and then a tube hybrid section. And what more can you ask? It's a very versatile amplifier, but it does tout a fairly high price tag at $1,700. Is it worth it? The iFi Audio Pro iCan. It is a very nice looking amplifier and very well laid out. Pretty small. Compared to other amplifiers, about 2 hands widths apart and about 2 hands widths deep. Has very stylish looking air vents on it, all kinds of inputs and outputs, a nice big rubber pad on the bottom, a little cutout so you can see inside it and see the lights for the tube. And when you turn it on, it'll flash for a bit and show green. It's kind of hard to tell that it's green on camera. Takes about 30 seconds to boot up, and then once it's ready to go, it'll change to white. Excuse me. Then if you take it and turn it to tube, it'll start flashing white, and as you can see, all of a sudden you get orange glow. Now there's not a tube directly underneath there, it's just LED lights that make it look like a tube glow, but it's very pretty and it shows right through those air vents. And it will flash white for a bit and then turn yellow, and that'll say, hey, I'm on tube. If you press that button one more time, it'll start flashing red, and it's going into tube hybrid mode, and then it'll go back to yellow, and it'll mean that it's good to go. If you put it back on solid state, it'll click back and go to white. You'll hear it kind of cycle through, and that's when you'll know that it's in its proper mode. It'll click. It usually takes, after everything's all warmed up, about 10 to 15 seconds to cycle through. If it has to warm up the tubes, it'll go to about 30 seconds. Overall, the 3 settings are very well implemented, and you can hear a slight difference between solid state, tube, and tube plus. Let's go over all the different settings on the device. So looking at the back side of it, you have a lot of different items. You have several inputs here. You have XLR input, so there's your 3-pin inputs. You have 3 RCA inputs, and then you have outputs. You have XLR output and RCA output. Then you have a ESL link, and that's connects, so if you have the ESL amplifier, you can link these two together. And then you have your 10 volt 4 amp input for DC, and then you have a DC loop out, so if you have several of the different iFi stacks, you can loop them together and use one power supply. On the bottom you have a nice rubber pad that says iFi on it. On the front you have your input selector, so the 1, 2, and 3 for RCA, and then you have your balanced XLR input. You have your bass, which goes from 10 Hertz to 40 Hertz, and it's just kind of a increase in bass. So if your headphones or your speakers lack a little bit in sub bass, you do 10 Hertz, and you might hear a little bit of a increase in that area. 20 Hertz, you'll start to get a little bit of mid bass hump, and then 40 Hertz, and you'll really get a thickness and a fullness in the bass sound. Then you have left and right 3-pin XLR outs, which also work as quarter outs. You have your 4-pin XLR. You have your 3D sound, which kind of spaces out your sound stage, and that also goes in different increments there. Then you have your volume knob, which is extremely smooth. Has a little notch in it so you know exactly where you're at. Here underneath the bass is your selector for solid state, tube, and tube plus. You have a single-ended 3.5 with IE match, and then you have a balanced 3.5 TRRS with IE match. And then you also have a infrared sensor, as this does have a remote. How did I find the iFi Audio Pro iCan to sound? I found that it was a very analytical type of sound, especially on solid state. At times it could have a slight coldness to it on certain headphones, but for the most part it was a very nicely resolving and clean analytical sound that was true. Didn't really color anything. When you put it on tube or tube plus, there was a slight increase in just overall thickness and warmness to the sound. It was very slight though. It wasn't a nice and big robust tubey sound. It was more of just a little bit of a musicality added in. Overall, I just found that the iFi Audio Pro iCan was a very pleasant amplifier to use, and it wasn't offensive in anything that I used it on. Not one single headphone that I used it with sounded bad. And in fact, headphones that tended to be a little bit on the more brittle and critical and analytical and just colder side had a little bit more musicality to them. Something like a Mr. Speaker's Ether C or even a T50RP Mayflower mod that just has a little bit of a edge to it, seemed to be a little bit more ear friendly, so to speak. How does the iFi Audio Pro iCan compare to other amplifiers? Well, for one, it has way more power than anything that I have in-house, and that is very evident in how that it drives, especially T50s. It just makes them come alive and really adds in a lot of dynamics and slam, which is a nice touch. But as far as everything else, it is a very clean sounding amplifier and does not color the sound. The only amplifier that I have that is true and clean, clear like that is my THX AAA 788, and I find that the 788 just has a little bit more of a natural tone to it. It just has a little bit more, just enough pleasantries to the ear, whereas the iFi Audio Pro iCan, as I said, can have a little bit of coldness to it every now and then, and the THX AAA 788 does not have that. It just has a little bit more rounded smoothness in the sound. The Cavelli Liquid Carbon X has a warmer tint to it, and all my other amplifiers tend to have just a little bit of colorization here or there added in. So the iFi Audio Pro iCan is very pleasing to look at and very pleasing to listen to. But it's not very pleasing to the wallet. And that is where you're going to have to, if you are looking at buying this, you're going to have to consider, am I going to use all the different options that this offers enough to warrant it? I think where this would come into play is if somebody has a plethora of headphones and they only want one amplifier, because this plays with everything. With the IE match, it'll play with really sensitive IEMs and sensitive over ears. With the balanced, you can run it with your more power hungry stuff, and being able to use your quarter outs also. And then having balanced outputs, you can use it with speakers. The bass boost and the 3D are just novelty items. I didn't really use them as I tend to be a purist and like it to be more portrayed as to what the amplifier and the DAC are saying with the recording versus adding in EQ and everything. But if that is your thing, it does have that added ability and it works very well. So $1,700. That's a lot of money. And if you are going to use everything that this has, then I would say it's a great device. If you're just going to add it into having 4 other amplifiers in your setup, then I don't know if I could justify that. This is the perfect amplifier for a reviewer because it plays with everything and does it well and has plenty of power to power everything. But at $1,700, versatility is there, but I don't know about value. Definitely could be an end game amplifier for most, but it's hard to justify $1,700. I truly have enjoyed the iFi Audio Pro iCan, and I wish that I could keep it for longer. And it sure is pretty to look at on the desk. Give me a sad day when I have to return this. Thank you again, iFi Audio, for sending out the Pro iCan for review. It has been a truly honor to have it here with me, and I do greatly appreciate it. This has been Dave with DBS Tech Talk. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Speaking of next video, somewhere on the screen is going to be a subscription link and notification bell. If you haven't already, please check those off. And check out the links down below for Discord and playlists and anything else pertaining to this video. Thanks, and have yourself a great day.